Have you noticed the price of gasoline has creeped up about a nickel since the start of the new year? Some are connecting that to the end of the 30-year-old ethanol subsidy program. The $6 billion a year program stopped at the end of 2011. And tonight in the Hot Box, Chris Berg from the 1100 AM The Flag is talking ethanol and fuel prices. Chris?
Thanks, Yvonne. Tonight in the Hot Box with me is Russ Newman. He's with the VP of Development with Theraldson Ethanol. Russ, thanks for joining me this evening. Let's start here because a lot of people do call it an ethanol subsidy. It's really a tax credit that's supposed to get passed on to the consumer, correct?
That's correct. It wasn't a 30-year subsidy. It was only about 10 years. But it was a 45-cent per gallon tax incentive, and at an E10 blend, 10% alcohol, 90% petroleum, it worked out to about 4.5 cents per gallon that the consumer realized at the pump, not the ethanol refiner, not the wholesaler, but the consumer.
So I had you on my radio show this morning, and a great question was emailed in. So if it's 45-cent tax credit supposed to get passed on to the consumer, why is the ethanol blend then 45 cents cheaper than the regular gas at the station?
Usually the E10 ratio is about 4 or 5 cents less. E85 would be quite a bit less because it's a higher blend of ethanol. But the whole idea behind that was to get an industry started, to get people to use it. It accomplished that, and now it's expired.
Let's talk about this. If the industry is so great, why not just have it stand on its own? I mean, the subsidies are over. There's not much you can do now. I'm sure there's something going on in the future because we haven't heard much about this from the farmers, the cone growers, the ethanol producers. Can it stand on its own?
Oh, yes, it can. And it expired, and you know, the mood in Washington is about cutting taxes and reducing spending, and it's justified. But we'd like to see some of the oil incentives looked at also, and along with us, to level the playing field, because after all, we are working with them and competing with them for the fuel market. You
know, again, from a marketing standpoint, everyone says, hey, the end of this tax credit program saved the taxpayer $6 billion. And yet what you're saying is this was a tax credit passed on to the consumer. So ultimately, how is it really saving the taxpayer $6 billion?
Well, it's saving them a heck of a lot more than that, and I'll tell you how. You know, if you remember
Excuse me, I'm not costing them $6 billion. The marketing said it cost them $6 billion. So how is it costing us $6 billion if it's a tax credit that's being passed on to the consumer?
Well, it's not. It's just $6 billion less that's taxed. So, I mean, a lot of us get fed up with paying too much taxes. They just took that one away. But to really break down why ethanol has a good future, I think it's quite best put in these terms. Why was crude oil $100 a barrel a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago, and gas went up to $4 a gallon, and now it's $100 a barrel for crude, and it's $3.30 per gallon. So you got a 70-cent gap there roughly. And when you go to the pump and you fill up with E10 or unleaded, 10% alcohol, there's a sticker on there that says 87 octane. And at the refinery level, what the refiners is wised up, and what they do now is they produce it at 84 octane, and then they ship it out and blend it with 113 octane pure alcohol, or E98, and they get that octane up to the 87. And the key to the whole thing is from getting it at the refinery level from 84 to 87. Those 3 points are the most expensive part of producing the gasoline. So they're saving anywhere from 25 to 75 cents per gallon at the refinery.
Now, the other big conversation with ethanol is obviously the food versus fuel debate. There's still a mandate out there. Even though this tax credit's over, there's still a 37% mandate that much corn production has to be put towards ethanol production. So I want to read a couple of things to you and get your comments on this food versus fuel debate. The Congressional Budget Office, producing ethanol for use in motor fuels increases the demand for corn, which ultimately raises the prices that consumers pay for a wide variety of foods at the grocery store. The Food and Ag Organization, prices for essential foodstuffs could double in 5 years, putting marginal income people deeper into poverty. You say?
Well, we would dispute that. The last two secretaries of agriculture, one Republican, one Democrat, Schaefer and Vilsack, their staffs dispute that. They feel like, we're not mandated to use 37% of the corn production. I think it's somewhat less than that. And as yields grow, we're averaging 2, 3, 4% yields increases in this country every year, and we don't expect it to exceed that.
So essentially you're saying that ethanol doesn't impact the increase in food costs?
Not substantially. You got to factor in other things like exports to international exports. Countries like China and Asia have been big buyers lately. And also the overall cost of energy is a major factor in the cost of all food prices.
You're the VP of Development for Tharaldson Ethanol, big business here in Castleton. Let's talk about the impact of that business here in the Valley. Now this is over with, what's the future of ethanol industry and for Tharaldson specifically here in the area?
Well, like I was telling you earlier about that octane thing, I think it's very good, because I think without ethanol in this country, we'd be at $4 a gallon right now, for that reason I explained earlier, because we're an octane enhancer. And it's also more profitable for the retailers. So if it's more profitable for the retailers to blend ethanol and the consumer pays less, the future looks good for us as ethanol refiners.
So is there going to be any sort of distribution type program now to help you guys get, because North Dakota's got the most pumps any state, in the nation. So is there going to be an opportunity now for you to start to get more distribution across the country and actually compete with oil? Yes,
I feel very that there's a lot of promise there. In North Dakota, we lead the nation in the amount of what we call flex pumps or blender pumps. And you'll see them, they have yellow hoses, and they offer blends from E85 to E30 down to E10. And the rest of the country is catching on, and the whole idea is to give the consumer more choice.
Russ, thanks for your time. Yvonne, it really is a heated debate. Now this is over, you got to think about what's the future of ethanol. I think one of the key things they've got to look at is obviously distribution. If they can get the right distribution points in place across the country, I think ethanol may have a chance to compete with oil. Obviously, oil is going to lobby hard against not having it there, so we'll see what the future holds.
Yeah,